Today, I stand at a point in my life where I have everything, and yet, nothing at all. My name is Robert Miller, I am 72, and I live in Chicago, United States. There was a time when people knew me as a successful businessman, but today, I see myself as a failed man. Have you ever wondered how someone can work their entire life, earn wealth, build success, and still end up completely alone? Is it possible that the very money we believe is our greatest achievement becomes our greatest failure? I never asked myself these questions, because back then, I was blinded by the race for money. I believed that if I had money, I had everything. Friends, respect, happiness, everything. But today, as I sit in my large, quiet house, the silence screams one truth at me over and over again. Robert, you didn't live your life, you only burned it away. I have seen everything a man could ever dream of. Expensive cars, luxury parties, a glamorous lifestyle. But I have lost everything that truly mattered. Time, relationships, and peace. And now, I am going to tell you my story, so that maybe, just maybe, you won't make the same mistake I made my entire life. Because sometimes, life doesn't give you a second chance. And I am the man who learned that truth far too late. My story begins when I was just an ordinary young man, with big dreams, but very limited resources. My name is Robert Miller, and in my youth, I began building my destiny on the streets of Chicago, United States, The early days were not easy. I lived in a small apartment, worked day and night, and every single moment, I carried one thought in my mind. I had to change my life. I started working on small business ideas. Sometimes I worked in sales, sometimes I ran small side businesses, and slowly, very slowly, I began to see success. First I made $1,000, then $10,000. And then there came a time when my account started seeing numbers I had only ever dreamed of. I thought maybe this was it. Maybe my life had finally changed. Maybe now I could have everything I had once seen in movies and imagined in my dreams. But I ignored one thing, and that was financial discipline. As my money grew, my mindset began to change. I no longer saw myself as just successful. I started seeing myself as someone special. I bought expensive cars, started wearing branded clothes, and became a regular at parties every single week in the high society of Chicago. I was soon recognized as a successful young businessman. People began to gather around me. People who laughed a lot, but spoke very little truth. Everyone wanted to be around me. Everyone wanted to be part of my life. But I failed to understand that most of them were connected to my money, not to me. There were nights when I would sit in expansive hotels and quietly tell myself I had one in life. Parties, friends, a luxury lifestyle. I had everything. And during that time, I adopted a very dangerous belief. Money will never run out. And even if it does, I can always make more. That was the first lie. The lie that shook the very foundation of my life. I never valued saving. I never thought about investment. I never cared about long-term financial planning. For me, life became nothing more than spending. I gave expensive gifts just to impress my friends. I paid the highest bills at every party so people would admire me, and I fulfilled every demand of my relatives just to keep them happy. In the beginning, it all felt amazing. People liked me, they praised me, and I believed I was the luckiest man alive. But I didn't realize that all of this was temporary happiness, hiding a very deep emptiness underneath. Time passed, and I began to notice something strange, that people who were always around me slowly started disappearing. The relatives who visited me every week only showed up when they needed something, but even then, I refused to accept the truth. I was happy in the world I had created, a world where money was everything, and emotions meant nothing. I never once stopped to think that success is not just about earning, it is about managing what you earn. And that was the moment when my life quietly started moving down a path from which returning would not be easy, but I was still completely unaware of it. In the beginning, everything felt completely normal, in fact, better than normal. My life had reached a point where, from the outside, it looked like I had achieved everything in the high society of Chicago. My name was spoken as a successful businessman. People used me as an example. This is what success looks like. But deep inside, I had already fallen into a habit I convinced myself was just a normal lifestyle. And that habit was uncontrolled spending, constant showing off, and an endless need for approval. I didn't even realize when my decisions stopped coming from logic, and started coming from ego. If a friend bought a new car, I made sure mine was more expensive. If someone talked about hosting a big party, I made sure mine was bigger. I had turned my life into a competition where no one truly wins, only people who slowly exhaust themselves. During that time, I built a circle around me. People who always laughed, always looked happy, and constantly made me feel like I was living a great life. But today, I understand something I couldn't see back then. That wasn't admiration. It was a transaction. As time passed, something else began to happen. My expenses kept increasing, and my decisions kept getting weaker. I ignored saving because I believed I would always have money. I avoided investment because it felt boring to me, and I dismissed financial planning because, in my mind, the future was always far away. But the truth is, the future is never far away. It moves toward us quietly, without making a sound. The first crack appeared when I faced a loss in a major business deal. It wasn't a huge loss, but it was a warning, and I ignored it. I told myself, it's okay, I'll recover it next time. That was the moment my life slowly began to shift, but I was still trapped inside the illusion I had created. I continued throwing more parties, making more friends, and spending even more money. I believed my life was unstoppable. But what I didn't understand was this: the people who stand with you in moments of pleasure are often the first to disappear in moments of difficulty. And that's when the cracks in my glamorous life slowly started to show. But I treated those cracks as if they were normal. I didn't realize that the world I believed was real was actually a fragile illusion, one that could break at any moment. The first real hint of truth came when I started noticing that the people around me were fading away. The same people who used to be with me every day suddenly became busy. The friends I partied with every weekend started replying late, or not at all. At first, I ignored it. I told myself, maybe everyone is just busy. Maybe life is changing. But the truth was, I was the one changing. And the reality of my life was beginning to reveal itself. Those nights in Chicago that once felt alive and electric, now felt empty. The same clubs, the same music, the same faces, but nothing felt real anymore. For the first time, I felt loneliness, a kind of loneliness that screams in silence, even in the middle of noise. At the same time, my expenses had grown even heavier. The lifestyle I had created was becoming harder and harder to maintain. Credit cards started maxing out. Bills began piling up, and pressure slowly entered my life. I'd always believed money would never run out, but now it was slipping through my hands. I reached out to some of my close friends, the same people I had spent every weekend with, but every time there was an excuse. They were busy, out of town, or simply unavailable. And for the first time, a question rose inside me. Were these people ever really my friends, or were they just part of my lifestyle? But even then, I tried to silence that question, because facing the truth is never easy. Then another blow came. One of my key business partners suddenly ended our partnership. He gave his reasons, but deep down, I understood. The trust was gone, and that was the moment my financial problems became visible. The money I had spent without planning was not coming back. For the first time, I realized something terrifying. I had spent my entire life walking a path with no safety net, no backup plan, and yet I still couldn't accept that I was wrong. I kept telling myself, maybe this is temporary. Maybe everything will be fine. But the truth was slowly moving closer, and this time, I couldn't run from it. There is one day I will never forget. The day I truly felt what loneliness means. It wasn't just the feeling of being alone. It was a kind of emptiness that no noise, no place, no possession could ever fill. I was sitting in my large house, the same house that once felt like a symbol of success. But on that day, it felt like a prison. The silence was so deep, I could hear the weight of my own thoughts. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, and suddenly a question hit me. Who do I even call? The people I used to spend every weekend with were no longer in my life. I called one, then another, but every time the response was the same busy cart talk. Maybe later, and later never came. In that moment, something inside me broke. That was the first time I started telling myself the truth. I said to myself, Robert, you didn't build friendships. You built a lifestyle that attracted people. All those parties flashed before my eyes, the expensive hotels, the loud music, the fake smiles. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. I had lived my entire life like a movie, where everything looked perfect, but nothing was real. By then, the financial pressure had become undeniable. Massive bills, unpaid debts, and a declining business had finally brought me face to face with reality. I called my accountant, and the numbers he told me, they didn't just shock me. They froze me. I had always believed I was rich. But the truth was, I was only temporarily comfortable. Now, I couldn't even afford the things that once felt normal. But the biggest pain wasn't the money. The biggest pain was this. There was no one left in my life I could be honest with. For the first time, I didn't look at my life from the outside. I looked at it from within. And what I saw was terrifying. I had spent my entire life trying to impress people, and I had never taken the time to understand myself. One night, I stood by the window of my house, the lights of Chicago glowing below me, but inside me, there was only darkness. I asked myself one question. If everything ends today, who will still be there for me? The silence answered, no one. That was the moment I collapsed, not with noise, not with tear, but with a quiet, internal breakdown. And for the first time, I understood something deeply. Money doesn't abandon people. We abandon everything that matters while chasing money. I remembered a quote by Warren Buffett. Do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. And I thought to myself, I never made saving a part of my life. After that night, my life was never the same again. I was still Robert Miller, still in the same city, still in the same house. But I was no longer the man who once believed he was successful. Silence was no longer just silence for me. It had become a mirror that showed me my true face every single day. For the first time, I started looking at my life with honesty, and I asked myself, what did I truly gain, and what did I lose? I earned wealth, but I never found peace. I made friends, but I never built real relationships. I gained recognition, but I never built trust. And the greatest loss of all was time. Time that can never be returned. I remembered a principle by Robert Kiyosaki. Financial intelligence is more important than money itself. And I thought, if I had understood this earlier, my life might have been completely different. I began to understand my mistakes. I realized the problem was never money. The problem was my mindset. I had learned how to make money, but I never learned how to manage it. I had learned how to please people, but I never learned how to understand myself. And that was my greatest failure. That day, I made a decision not to change my past, because that was no longer possible, but to understand the life I still had left. I started simplifying everything. I cut down unnecessary spending. I let go of relationships that had no meaning. And most importantly, I started telling myself the truth. But some things can never come back. The friends I once laughed with are now just memories. The relationships I ignored have drifted too far away. And that truth hurts the most. Today, I am not telling you this story so you can feel sorry for me. I am telling you this so that maybe you can learn something from my mistakes. Because the most dangerous thing in life is not poverty. It is wealth, without the wisdom to manage it. If you are successful today, if money is coming into your life, then remember this. The real test is not earning money. The real test is managing it. I learned this truth far too late, and maybe that is why I am telling you this today. Don't spend your entire life just making money. Spend some time understanding it and understanding yourself. Because a day will come when you may have everything, but you might not have the people for whom you sacrificed everything. And now, let me ask you one question. If today you are making the same decisions that I once made, are you certain your ending will be any different? Or will you one day stand where I stand and say, I wish I had understood this before it was too late?